with the state of the nation today, is no time to waste. Get to work immediately.
On day one, President Biden announced 17 executive actions and directives targeting things like the pandemic, racial equity, and the environment.
The executive orders include a mask mandate in federal buildings, rejoining the Paris Climate Accord, and a reversal of a number of immigration policies that had been implemented by President Trump.
Biden ended Trump's travel ban from Muslim-majority countries, stopped the national emergency for the border wall, and overturned an order that expanded deportations.
Definitely a strong statement.
Immigration attorney Sutvir Chaudhry sees Biden's moves as practical and symbolic. Biden's primary opponents had challenged him on his connection to Obama-era deportations, but Biden is also replacing a Trump administration that implemented family separation and other policies criticized by many as overly harsh.
They didn't want to see the cruelty that occurred towards non-citizens and the singling out of certain types of non-citizens.
Biden also introduced an immigration bill to Congress and wants legislators to consider his COVID-19 package. Democrats now control both chambers, but in the Senate, it's 50-50 with Vice President Harris as the tiebreaker.
What can get done with such a slim majority in the Senate?
Well, it is certainly more helpful to have majority party control than to be without it. But it is indeed very slim in the Senate.
With a simple majority, Democrats can confirm cabinet members and pass measures through budget reconciliation, including some COVID-19 relief. But for, say, immigration, Biden will need Republican support to overcome their filibuster power.
Some measures will still require 60 votes if any senators mount a filibuster, which is quite likely when senators oppose legislation.
Danny Spiewak, KARE 11 News.
A Biden spokesperson said today that he'll try to get Republican support for another round of COVID-19 relief, but may move it through the budget process if necessary. Democrats could pass that, as you just heard, with 50 votes in the Senate.